You know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
Well,
you ought to try
CR that I'm doing it right now, brother.
A heated debate unfolded on CNN as political commentators clashed over the ongoing government funding impasse. Scott Jennings and Karen Finney faced off on Caitlin Collins' show, presenting starkly different perspectives on who bears responsibility for the current shutdown. With Republicans controlling key legislative levers, questions arise. Why hasn't a resolution been reached? And how are both parties framing the narrative? We'll break down the key moments from this CNN debate, examine the arguments from both sides, and analyze what this means for the broader political landscape. Let's dive into the details.
White House is arguing today.
Well, the president did try to bring them into the room the other day, and they wouldn't budge. I mean, look, the facts here are pretty simple. The Republican Party has put on the floor and voted for a clean, continuing resolution, no changes. These are Biden budget numbers, by the way, and numbers that Democrats have voted for 13 times. Nothing up our sleeves here, Caitlin. They're trying to keep the government open long enough to negotiate things like the health care issue, which you were just debating, which I actually think maybe Republicans will wind up dealing on that. But they're not going to do it under duress, and they're not going to do it under threat of rolling back all the Medicaid reforms that were done this summer. So I think President Trump tried to bring the Democrats in. And at the end of the day, I think the American people know here they're looking at two parties. One's trying to do a bunch of funny business. One's trying to keep the doors open. And right now, I don't think the funny business side is winning in the eyes of the American people.
Karen, what's your view on that?
Well, I just want to correct something. You know, Scott, you know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
You ought to try CR that I'm doing it right now, brother. So the CR is that the Republicans have proposed is actually not clean. It's pretty dirty because it includes the $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that the American people themselves have made clear they do not like. So it is not the same. I think it would be a very different moment and conversation if literally we were talking about what was passed in 2024. That is not the actual fact of the case. The fact of the case is that the measure is something that, again, the American people themselves have said they do not like. The other piece of this is, I think Democrats have a clear, concise message in terms of health care. Think about this. Republicans are on the side of saying we have to protect these tax cuts for billionaires. That's going to impact the wealthiest 1%. Democrats are saying we want to protect health care for over 20 million American families. And I agree with what, I was glad Senator Smith pointed out. I also just got my email today about my health care and choosing a plan. So people are already seeing that their costs are going to go up starting in January 2026. So I think Democrats feel pretty strong about this because the politics have changed. And, the last thing I would just say on this, my first government shutdown, Scott, I know you've been through a few of them too, was in the Clinton administration. And the kind of backslapping, oh, we're just joking that we heard from the vice president today. Well, we heard that from Newt Gingrich, and he was, bracing for the fight. And we all know how that worked out. I don't think the American people like seeing the president make light of their health care or their jobs.
Scott, you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're stunned. I'll just be honest with you. We're stunned. The Democratic constituencies are principally immigration populations and government workers. And right now,
I'm a Democrat, and I'm not an immigrant, and I'm not a government worker.
You're putting
Scott,
one on top of
yourself.
You're putting one on top of the other.
My mother is a Democrat. She's not an immigrant. She's not a government worker.
This is what your party relies on, and you've closed shop on government in Washington, D.C., and eventually they're going to get tired of it. There is no reason this government cannot be left
Americans
open.
Who voted.
One of the most striking moments in this debate reveals a fundamental tension in how political messaging works on cable news. Scott Jennings, a frequent CNN contributor and Republican strategist, responded defensively when challenged on the accuracy of his framing. But here's what makes this exchange particularly noteworthy. While Jennings argues that President Trump wants bipartisan cooperation, Public reporting shows Trump has actively encouraged Republicans to reject Democratic negotiations. This contradiction raises important questions about political spin versus political reality. This isn't about personal attacks, it's about media literacy. When watching political commentary, viewers should ask, are the claims backed by evidence? Do the statements align with documented actions? Is the narrative consistent with public record? Jennings is skilled at his craft. He's a professional communicator presenting his party's position. But effective media consumption requires distinguishing between political strategy and factual accuracy. Understanding these dynamics helps us better evaluate political discourse, regardless of which side is making the argument. Let's continue examining the debate.
Kamala Harris were all immigrants?
No, I'm saying
that's not true.
I'm saying I'm listening to Democratic arguments about most policy issues, and I'm looking at Democratic energy, and it mostly has to do with things to do with immigrants, illegal and some legal, and things to do with government bureaucrats. And right now, you're putting one of your constituencies out of business.
Can I say one thing, which is that people who are in the country cannot get these subsidies that we're talking about?
Sure they can.
No, they can't.
No, they can't. It's federal law, Scott.
Who do you think pays when they go to the emergency room? It's the Medicaid
Scott,
emergency program.
Going to the emergency room is not getting an Obamacare subsidy.
You guys are conflating. You guys are conflating these issues. You're conflating these issues.
And you're being dishonest with
the subsidies are a separate issue. The Medicaid program cuts are a different thing.
Right, but I'm talking about subsidies.
And the Obamacare stuff are two different issues. And I said the subsidies may get negotiated over time. But what Democrats want to do is roll back what the Republican Medicaid reforms were. They want, look, I don't understand why everybody's so mad. For time immemorial, Democrats have argued that it's good. It's good for illegal immigrants to get Medicaid. Every candidate for president in 2020 raised their hand for it. In the big, beautiful bill debate, they argued it was good policy. I can't believe there's an about-face of the Democratic Party on it today.
Hold on. I got a question for Karen, but Scott, I will say, people who are in the country illegally also can't get Medicaid.
Sure they can. Sure they can.
They can't get Medicaid.
They also can't register to vote. They also can't register to vote, but we just found one in Maryland who was running the Des Moines school system.
Oh my God, one!
I mean, I'm telling you guys say these things can't happen, and then they happen.
But I'm just saying it's federal law.
You can run cover for it if you want, but they do get federal tax money. They get federal tax money. Ask Jake, he had it on today.
I'm just saying it's against federal law to do that.
It is.
Karen, can I ask you, because one thing that we've heard from Democrats over the last several months is that the president's consolidation of power is dangerous. That's how Democrats have framed this. But now what House Speaker Mike Johnson, the point he was making here last night, is that Democrats have handed the president more power by shutting the government down, because now they're canceling and stopping these contracts and saying they're going to fire a bunch of federal workers during this period. Was that a mistake in your view?
Well, but again, the president, it's a choice that the president can make. I mean, governing is all about choices, right? The leader of the country can say, hey, I'm going to protect tax cuts for billionaires, or I'm going to make sure over 20 million American families can get the subsidies they need to afford their health care and not see it double. And by the way, Russell Vought is not someone who, this government is, we know they're going to doge their way through the rest of the federal government anyway. I don't think there's much credibility in saying, hey, we're going to use this to lay people off. I mean, I just want to consider, it's a different pot of money, but think about the optics. The White House confirmed to Fox News today that the construction of the Grand Ballroom will continue while they are talking about laying people off and potentially firing people. That is outrageous. If you're serious about negotiating, as the senator said, you don't do things like that. You say, we are going to bring everybody to the table. Let's see what we can get done. And Scott, part of the reason this issue around the ACA credits, as the senator, I think, pointed out, there's not a lot of credibility here. So let's act like adults. Let's come to the table and stop making threats about, we're going to fire these people and we're going to, you know what, you're the leader. It's your job to bring people together.
Two major claims emerge from this debate that deserve closer examination. Let's separate fact from spin. Here's what's actually happening. Under a Reagan-era policy, hospitals can receive emergency Medicaid reimbursement when treating uninsured patients, regardless of immigration status. This isn't providing Medicaid benefits to individuals. It's reimbursing hospitals for emergency care they're legally required to provide. The distinction matters. No one is enrolling in Medicaid coverage. Hospitals are being paid for emergency treatment already rendered. Multiple comprehensive studies examining billions of ballots consistently show fraud rates below even a fraction of 1%. When cases do occur, they're typically administrative errors rather than intentional fraud. Jennings cited a single case, which Finney quickly noted represents an outlier, not a pattern. Political debates often hinge on how facts are framed. Emergency hospital reimbursement becomes illegals getting Medicaid. Isolated incidents become widespread fraud. Understanding the actual policies helps voters cut through messaging from both parties. What's your take on this debate? Did either side make compelling arguments? Drop your thoughts below, and if you found this analysis helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more breakdowns of political debates. I'm Insights Brief. See you in the next one.